For 80 years, they shared everything: love, laughter, pain, and dreams. But in his final breath, he revealed something that shattered everything she believed. How could a man so devoted, so deeply intertwined in her life, carry a secret so dark, so unimaginable? As she held his frail hands, his voice a whisper between life and death, her world crumbled. "There's something I've never told you." The words hung in the air, thick with unspoken agony. She searched his fading eyes, desperate to understand, but what she heard next would change everything. Before we uncover the truth, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you think love can truly survive any secret, let us know. But beware, some secrets are too powerful, too devastating to forgive. The year was 1942, a time of war, a time when the world was crumbling, yet love still found a way to bloom. Margaret stood on the cold, worn platform of the train station, her fingers wrapped tightly around the fabric of her coat as a steady drizzle fell from the heavens. The scent of coal and rain intertwined in the air, mingling with the distant sound of a train's whistle, a sorrowful cry against the backdrop of an uncertain world. War had stolen so much: sons, fathers, dreams. But on this day, fate had decided to give something back. Henry stepped off the train with the heavy gait of a soldier who had seen too much, carried too much. His uniform was pressed but worn, his boots caked with the dust of foreign lands, and his eyes, oh, his eyes, spoke in ways words never could. They carried the weight of memories unspoken, of battles fought not just with bullets but within the very depths of his soul. And then, in the chaos of the bustling station, his gaze found her. Margaret's breath hitched. It was not just the sharp line of his jaw or the way the wind tousled his dark hair. It was the way he looked at her, as though he had been searching for something, for someone, and had finally found it. A silent understanding passed between them, something ancient, something sacred. Neither spoke a word. None were needed. The war, the years, the ghosts, none of it mattered in that moment. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, time stood still. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, and what had begun as a chance encounter became an unbreakable tether. Their love was not the grand, dramatic kind written in novels, nor was it the fleeting passion of a war-torn romance. It was something deeper, something carved into their very bones. It was the kind of love built in the quiet moments, in the brush of fingers against weary skin, in the way he whispered her name, as though it were the only thing tethering him to this world. They built a life together, small and humble, but filled with warmth. Their tiny home smelled of fresh bread and lavender, of mornings spent in lazy conversation and evenings wrapped in the comfort of each other's embrace. When Henry awoke in the dead of night, sweat clinging to his skin, haunted by memories he dared not speak aloud, Margaret was there. She traced soothing patterns along his back, whispering reassurances even when she knew the shadows of his past would never fully fade. Through hardships, through triumphs, they stood side by side, unshakable. Or so she thought. But love, as beautiful as it is, can sometimes be built on illusions. Years passed, and though their love was strong, Margaret couldn't silence the quiet unease that settled in her bones. Henry was a devoted husband, a man who kissed her forehead every morning and held her hand every evening. Yet, beneath the warmth of his embrace, there was something lingering just beyond her reach, a shadow that clung to him, silent but suffocating. He never spoke of his past, not once. To Margaret, it was as if Henry had materialized the day they met, fully formed, without history, without roots. He deflected questions with a practiced ease, always managing to turn the conversation back to the present. And for a time, Margaret let it go. Because love, she told herself, was about the future, not the past. But the past has a way of making itself known. Sometimes, in the dead of night, Henry would stir beside her, his body tense with invisible war. Sweat would bead on his brow, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. And then, whispers, names, foreign and unfamiliar, slipping from his lips like ghosts of a life untold. Margaret would reach for him, shaking him gently, and his eyes would snap open, wide, wild, unfocused. It took him a moment to remember where he was, who he was with. And then, just like that, the mask would return. He would smile, press a kiss to her temple, and whisper a soft reassurance before turning away, leaving her staring at the ceiling, heart pounding. The whispers grew more frequent, the tension more palpable. It was in the way he flinched at unexpected sounds, the way his hands trembled when he thought no one was watching, the way he sometimes stared at their wedding photo, his expression unreadable, lost in a place Margaret could never follow. And then, one night, she woke to find him gone. The bed beside her was empty, the sheets cool to the touch. A tendril of unease curled around her spine as she rose, moving through the house in search of him. She found him in the living room, sitting in the dark, the only illumination coming from the dying embers in the fireplace. But it wasn't the dim light that stole her breath. It was what he held in his hands. A letter, old and yellowed, its edges frayed by time. It trembled between his fingers, his knuckles white from the pressure of his grip. His head was bowed, shoulders hunched, the weight of an unseen burden pressing down on him. Margaret swallowed, stepping closer, her voice soft. Henry. He didn't startle, didn't even lift his gaze. He simply exhaled, a long, shuddering breath, and folded the letter as if sealing something away. When he finally looked at her, the smile he offered was thin, almost brittle. Just an old memory, he said. But Margaret wasn't fooled. Memories didn't make a man weep in the dead of night. Memories didn't shroud a man in secrets. And memories didn't make a woman feel like she was living with a stranger. It wasn't until his final moments, with breath shallow and hands trembling, that the truth came spilling out. A secret buried for 8 decades. A confession so heart-wrenching that it left Margaret gasping for air. Henry's voice was barely above a whisper, each word slipping through his lips like a dying ember. His grip on her hand was weak, yet urgent, as if afraid that the moment he let go, the truth would fade into nothingness. Margaret, I'm not who you think I am. Her world tilted, the room swaying under the weight of those words. What are you talking about? Her voice was small, fragile, bracing for something she wasn't sure she was ready to hear. His tired eyes flickered with something between regret and desperation. I was married before I met you, and she never really left. The air vanished from her lungs. Her fingers trembled in his grasp. The words clanged through her mind, discordant, dissonant, unraveling everything she had believed about the man she had loved for a lifetime. What do you mean? Who? Her voice cracked, her pulse pounding in her ears. A long pause. His chest rose and fell, each breath shallower than the last. She's alive. She's been alive all these years. Margaret's body trembled. Another woman, another life. But the truth, oh, the truth, was even darker than she could have ever imagined. Henry had been a different man before he met her. A man entangled in something sinister. A life he had run from, a past he had buried. And now, on his deathbed, it had all come back to haunt them both. Her knees threatened to buckle. The weight of his confession pressed into her chest like a vice, suffocating, relentless. How could she not have known? How could the man she had spent a lifetime loving, trusting, be someone entirely different than the person she thought she knew? Tears welled in her eyes, but she forced herself to look at him, to see him not as the man she had adored, but as the stranger he had just revealed himself to be. Where is she? The question left her lips before she could stop it. Henry's gaze faltered. His breathing was ragged, uneven. I don't know. But she was never supposed to be gone. Margaret's hands flew to her mouth as a sob tore through her chest. Not just another woman. Not just another life. A secret far darker than infidelity. A past that had never truly been buried. And now, with Henry's final breaths, that past was clawing its way back to the surface. Margaret's love, her devotion, was it all a lie? Had she spent 80 years as nothing more than a placeholder for the past he tried so desperately to escape? Tears streamed down her face as she clutched his trembling hand, her grip firm, as if she could somehow tether him to this world just a little longer. The warmth was fading from his fingers, his breath shallow and uneven. His eyes, those same eyes she had loved for a lifetime, now clouded with something unreadable. Regret? Relief? Fear? Why, Henry? Her voice was barely above a whisper, trembling, breaking. Was I never enough? But there was no response. Only the heavy silence of a truth too cruel to face. With one final, ragged breath, Henry was gone. The stillness that followed was deafening. The weight of his confession suffocated the room, pressing down on Margaret's chest like a boulder. She was alone, utterly, devastatingly alone. Her fingers slipped from his now lifeless hand, and she collapsed against the bed, grief consuming her whole. A lifetime of love, of shared memories, of whispered laughter and stolen kisses, all reduced to a question with no answer. Had she ever truly known him? Or had she spent 80 years living beside a man who had been a stranger all along? The past had stolen him from her in the end, and Margaret was left with nothing but questions and the unbearable, hollow ache of a love that perhaps had never been real. So now, the question lingers. Can love survive a lie? If you discovered a truth like this after decades of devotion, would you forgive, or would you walk away, even when there was nowhere left to go? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. What would you do? And if you were gripped by this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because some secrets deserve to be heard. But remember, not all secrets should be uncovered.